Teachers, what's the worst thing a kid brought for show and tell? So my wife has been a first grade teacher for almost 17 years, and trust me, she saw some crazy stuff over the years. But by far the craziest was a little girl who brought in a shoebox that supposedly contained her pet hamster. So the mom had said when they dropped her off with it that she would drop back by after lunch and grab the hamster to take it home. By the way, this wasn't one of the families you might think would bring in something crazy or would even have to watch out for. Actually, everyone knew the mom really well from her travel, blog, and nutrition, sales stuff all over Facebook. Anyway, around 9 they started show and tell, but saved 2 of the kids for last since they brought live pets. Did I mention that all 4 of the first grade classes were in one room together for this? Along with 2 college student teachers and a random parent that was videoing everything. So, little girl, her shoebox on the table, around 40 to 50 first graders in a semicircle. They told her to hold the hamster first, and then after she told them about him, she could put him back in the box and have 5 students at a time go up to the box to see it. The first red flag that they should have seen was when she opened the box halfway and looked confused. She took something out and sat it to the side with a worried look on her face and was digging through the shoebox for her hamster that she could not find. I think because of her panic of not knowing where the hamster was, no one immediately realized the first object she pulled out. It was a small bullet vibe. Just wait, it gets way worse. So the closest person to helping the girl was actually one of the student teachers. As she was almost next to the girl, the entire shoebox, which was now wide open, was all making a ton of noise and vibrating. My wife said she saw the student teacher gasp, closed the box top as fast as she could, grabbed the small bullet vibe, and carried the box over to the corner to my wife and the other first grade teachers. So just to be careful, the teachers left the students with the student teachers and took the box to the next classroom that was empty. When they opened up the box, the first thing they saw is what they described as an insane, massive, intimate toy that was moving back and forth and vibrating. The box was also full of rings, rubbers, lube, handcuffs, ties, and a gag. Somehow the little girl had come across her parents' intimate shoebox in their closet and thought it was the same box they had put her hamster in for her, and they didn't realize she had grabbed a different box. By the way, it took them at least a couple of minutes to figure out how to completely turn off the toy that was going nuts in the box. Side note, it's not like most of them didn't know what an adult toy looked like or a vibe was, but she said this thing barely fit corner to corner, like 14 to 15 inches. Said it was larger around than a large man's actual forearm. She said all they could talk about was, is she actually using this thing? Because that's crazy. So you're probably wondering, how did she let the mom know? My wife basically called her and told her, I think your daughter has grabbed the wrong box this morning and said she grabbed your makeup box by accident. So I left it on top of the cubbies whenever you pick her up after school. The mom never said anything to her, but you could tell when she saw which box it was. A horrified look came over her face as she walked out of the school. Anyway, as you can guess, there were a lot of hilarious conversations that happened that night and over the next several days and weeks around this incident. Story 2. When I was in 2nd grade, my mom somehow came into the possession of a freshly severed shark head. I was 8, so I didn't really care about that, just that show and tell was the next day. I asked my mom if I could bring said shark head to school, and for some reason she said yes. I brought the severed shark head to class in a plastic grocery bag in my backpack. Show and tell was early in the morning, so when the time came, I went to my locker and brought it in. Everyone thought it was super cool and we got to pass it around. After show and tell, I put the shark head back in my locker without a second thought. It's worth mentioning that we were toward the end of the school year at this point, around May or June, so it was quite warm out and our school didn't have air conditioning. When I came back to my locker at the end of the day, the smell of hot, rotting shark head had permeated the entire hallway. The smell was indescribable. The worst part was all of our stuff was in the locker, and the closer we got, the worse the smell was. I just plugged my nose and wrapped it up as tight as I could in the grocery bag and ran out of school before people knew it was my fault. Promptly threw it away in the grocery store dumpster across the street before walking home. So you're telling me, in a plastic grocery bag in a dumpster, you left a decomposing shark head. Guarantee someone was like, what's that smell? Took a look, saw a shark's head, and was like, I gotta lay off the drink. Story 3. These are my aunt's stories, but she teaches at an elementary school in Detroit. Just shows you what kind of parents are in this world. The worst thing ever brought was a little baggie of white powder. The student said her daddy makes lots of little baggies with it. Well, it turns out, yeah, It was drugs. My aunt had the administration talk with her, and they think the mom gave it to her so they would bust the dad. Anyway, there was nothing the school could do but try and have a parent-teacher meeting. 98% of the parents never show up, though. The runner-up was a few years earlier or later, I'm not sure of the timeline exactly. This little boy wanted to show off his dance moves. He learned these moves from his mom at home. He basically started humping and grinding on the table in the classroom. Well, my aunt quickly stopped that and once again involved the administration. The mom actually picked up the phone, and when they asked where he would learn these dance moves, she admitted he would watch her, as she would provocatively dance on numerous appliances and pieces of furniture. She admitted she was an adult entertainer for some club, and she didn't see anything wrong with the dancing. This next one wasn't technically show and tell, but he might have decided to show it off. Most of her kids ride the bus to school, and in the winter everything is frozen over and super cold. Well, this one kid found a, quote, Tootsie Roll at the bus stop and put it in his pocket to save for later. Well, when class started, my aunt smelled something and was looking around for what it was. She narrowed it down to that one student and asked him if he had anything in his pockets. He pulled out his Tootsie Roll and it was dripping out of his hands. The Tootsie Roll, was most likely dog poop. Story 4. I'm late to the party, and this wasn't show and tell, but I think it fits. It's one of my best first-year teaching stories. I was teaching kindergarten at the time, and my class was a hot mess with behaviors. One of my frequent flyer girls was repeatedly going to her backpack, and a couple of other girls were joining her in a huddle at the back of the room. After calling them back to reading rotations a couple of times, I quietly walked up behind the group and asked, "So, what you got in your backpack?" Well, the two girls looked shocked, and the girl herself burst into tears, which was a terrible sign. I shoo the others away and ask for a random para who happened to be helping. Normally, I had no other adults in the room, to read something on the carpet while I asked this girl what the hell was going on. She said her pet bunny was in the backpack. I asked, foolishly hoping, like a stuffed bunny? No, a real bunny. So I look inside and lo and behold, she has a baby rabbit in her backpack. So I pick up the bag, take her arm and say, "Okay, hun, let's get this to the office." She is sobbing and yelling that they're going to take her bunny away, and I say if it's really her pet, her mom will put it back in its pen at home. Spoiler alert, totally not her pet. Well, I walk into the office and announce there's a baby rabbit in the backpack I'm holding, and when we look in again, it's dead. A dead, wild baby rabbit. And at this point, we don't know if it went into the backpack alive and died on the way to school, or if she ended it, or it was already dead. Either way, all terrible. So we have to call animal control and parents and bring in every little girl who touched it, because it was a wild animal, and rabbits have all kinds of diseases. And we had to clear my classroom and spend the afternoon in the library finishing assignments, because facilities needed to come and check my classroom for fleas and crap. But wait, there's more. When she's in the office, she is losing it and shouts out that, "Yeah, but Jessica has some too." Her older sister in second grade had 2 more dead baby bunnies in her backpack. That class had to share the library with me. Apparently a bunch of baby rabbits had died on the family property and they were going to have a proper burial that night, but the kids snuck them out of the shoebox in the garage into their backpacks to show kids their pets. The parents thought it was funny. I am excited to teach 4th grade next year instead. That is horrifying, but at least they didn't hurt the rabbits. They were already dead. Not great, still, don't get me wrong. Health hazard galore, but at least they didn't, suffocate them in their bags or something. Yeesh. Story 5. My oldest daughter brought my wedding ring, but it never even made it to show and tell. Every evening I would put it in a small wooden box on my dresser. In hindsight, I can see how my daughter thought that box looked similar to a treasure chest. It was near Valentine's Day and the kids all had to decorate a shoebox at school for their Valentine's cards to each other, and my daughter wanted to put something sparkly in her treasure box, so she took my ring. That morning I got her onto the school bus and then got my morning shower and went to put on my ring, but it wasn't there. I always put it in the same spot every night. I didn't immediately panic, but called my husband at work. He hadn't moved it, but he assumed I'd lost it. I searched the house and my car, but I was positive I'd put it in the box. I decided to call the school and see if I could speak to my daughter's teacher, just to see if the teacher could ask my daughter if she had seen Mommy's ring. The teacher said my daughter didn't bring anything for show and tell that day, but she'd ask about the ring. A few hours later, the teacher called me back and said my daughter did admit to taking the ring with her to put in her Valentine's box after for show and tell, but she, quote, didn't know where it went. I spoke with staff at the school and everyone started searching for the ring. The janitorial staff emptied vacuums and pilfered through the dust bunnies. I told the school I was willing to come up and dig through all the lunch trash. I had to find my ring. I got a call from school transportation that afternoon just before my daughter got home. The bus driver had it. The buses usually run 2 routes. First picking up elementary-aged kids, then later transporting the middle and high schoolers. The bus driver happened to overhear a kid find the ring and say, "Dude, look what I found. I'm giving this ring to my girlfriend. It's so fancy. She'll have to put out," something along those lines. The bus driver thankfully intervened, asking what he'd found, and asking to hold it for its rightful owner. I was so glad they found it. I gave the bus driver a reward and made brownies and cookies for all the staff who had been so kind and so willing to help me find it. My daughter was in the 1st grade at the time, and now she's 22. Whew, thanks for the trip down memory lane. Yeesh, if she had actually lost OP's ring. OP sounds like a kind-hearted individual. I don't think they would hold it against their daughter forever, but there would be a little something lingering. Rightfully so, I think. Obviously don't, hate your child, but a little, I know what you did, kid. Story 6. So I was in kindergarten. My mom used to call my aunt or uncle to come over and babysit me every once in a while. This was the 70s, so they were the really cool aunt and uncle since they were significantly younger than my mom. They were always more than willing to play with me on the swing set or in the sandbox. They would smoke cigarettes that smelled really funny. One day while we were playing and they were smoking their smelly cigarettes, I noticed a barrette on it with really pretty fluffy white feathers. I wanted it so bad. My aunt gave it to me and put it in my hair. I loved it. It was like no other barrette I'd ever seen. I brought it with me to school the next day for show and tell. The teacher asked if she could see it, so I showed it to her. When my mom came to pick me up from school, the teacher wanted to talk to her for a minute. So she told me to play outside and wait for her, so I did. When we got in the car, my mom asked me, "Do you know what a roach clip is?" I was like, "I don't know." She said, "Where did you get that barrette from?" "Auntie V gave it to me." She just said, "I knew it. Okay, Auntie V and Uncle M will not be babysitting you anymore." I was absolutely devastated. Okay, I am currently looking up what a roach clip is. I've never heard of this in my life. Oh. So with the editing, the pause is not going to be in there. I stopped for a minute while I read what it is. It's a weed thing. I get it now. Sorry, I haven't smoked before. That makes sense why they would be a little worried. Not like kindergarten OP was lighting it up though. And the one I saw, the first one to show up on Google when I searched it, it looks pretty appealing to a child. There were a lot of feathers, it was really colorful. I get it. But the aunt and uncle, knowing what that was, probably shouldn't have let you put it in your hair. Story 7. Not a teacher, but I've always brought weird crap to school for show and tell, including a black widow because I thought the red marking was neat. Most memorable, though, would probably be when I was in 3rd grade and I had lobster for the first time. I thought the shell was the coolest thing on earth and decided to put it in my backpack that night. I walked to school that day and in the morning, I opened up my backpack to get my pencils, etc., and never zipped it back up. Throughout the day, the smell started to get very strong. We hung our backpacks in the back of the class. We all went to lunch, and when we came back, the classroom smelled so bad it made you gag. The teacher was like, "Oh, what's that smell?" and opened the door to air out the classroom. End of the day, and we do our show and tell. We go by last name, and I'm last. I pull out this smelly lobster shell and proudly showed it off. My teacher was mad. The classroom smelled for the next 2 days. After that, every week, if it was show and tell day, he would stop me outside the classroom to ask what I was bringing. Surely he should feel the need to tell you more than once, right? It's not like you did it again. OP, right? Anyway, horrible. Lingering seafood smell. Rotting seafood smell, in fact. Yuck. But that was the last story for today, ending it on a beautiful, smelly note. Did you guys ever do show and tell? I don't really remember it from when I was younger. Maybe once or twice, but nothing of note happened. What about you? For now, though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.